Good afternoon. Hi everyone, thanks for joining today. Welcome to today's CI Tools webinar. All right. My name is Josh Osborne and I'm the product manager here for the CI Tools. And welcome to our weekly session for the CI Tools, where we look at stuff to do with CI Tools. Might be specific problems, specific questions. We might be looking at a tool in general. We might be looking at new functions or updates and that sort of thing. Various topics that we cover here, generally by user request if we can do. So if you have any suggestions for a session like one of these ones, please let us know on the support desk what you'd like to see. If you have any questions or other things you'd like to suggest looking at as we go, you can also enter those in the comments or chat panels as we're going through. Today we're going to be looking at the coverings tool for a bit. I've had a whole bunch of questions this week about coverings, about doing various things with the coverings tool. So the general theme for today is just going to be doing kind of unusual things with the coverings tool. How to deal with certain situations, things you might not know about that you can do with the tools and that sort of thing. We're going to be working in ArchiCAD 27, however all of the stuff that we're going to be looking at is also available in ArchiCAD 26 as of the latest update. And we're going to be using the new coverings tool, so if any of you guys haven't come across it yet, we did an update to the coverings tool I would say about 3 months ago, where we made some relatively large changes to the way that it works, in particular to do with building materials. So there were some relatively large scale changes there, and so what we're going to be looking at today uses those coverings. You may be able to find similar settings in the old coverings for most of what we're looking at here. I'll try and flag up if there's anything that definitely isn't available in the old tool as we go though. So first of all, we're going to look at some roof coverings things, and we're going to start with this roof that you can see here. So if I jump to my 3D view, it's this red one over here. So what we're going to do is we're going to attach a roof cladding to this one. So we'll just go into select my roof. Hopefully you're already relatively familiar with the coverings tool. I'll be assuming that you have at least maybe played with it once or twice in this session. So what we're going to do is we're going to say roof coverings. I'm going to choose to add one of those. I'm just going to reset this one to the default settings. So we're just going to go with absolute default settings, and I'm just hit OK. And that's going to place down a corrugate roof cladding onto this roof. So you can see that it does pretty much exactly what you would expect it to. So we've got our roof there. You can see that the cladding has applied all the way across. We've got our flashings and that sort of thing going on. And you can see the soffits happening down here as well. So it looks pretty good. So this is one of the things that the coverings tool is designed to do, is that in the case of most sort of regular looking roofs, it will pick up the settings, or it will assume rather settings that make sense for that shape of roof, and it will just do that, and you can see that that's what we've got here. So with the complete default settings, it does something that looks pretty good. But what I'm going to show you here today to start with is the mitering option for our peaks or our ridges. So what I'm going to do first is I'm just going to jump back into 2D and we'll grab hold of this roof. There it is. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to crank the angle across. So I'm going to grab this part here, I'm going to pull it right over to here, so make it really uneven. Jump back into our 3D view, and now you can see that it is doing that. So it still maintains what we would want it to be. We've still got gutters on our ends and that sort of thing. But what we're going to do is, actually we've got corrugate here. What we're going to do is we're going to change this to ribs, just so that you can see this a bit better. So I'll jump into claddings here, and I'll change to ribbed metal. Okay, so you can see the ribs carrying across here. What we want to do is we want to get rid of this flashing here. We want it to pass directly up and over without having a big chunk of metal in the middle of the thing here. So that's what we're going to do. So we've only got one ridge on each roof here, so this is nice and straightforward. So we'll go into the settings again, and we're going to look at the settings for that flashing. So we'll go to flashings page here, and then we're going to go to the ridge flashing. And you can see at the moment, by default, for at least for a default settings roof here, it's going to have match the barge flashing selected here, which is what you're seeing there. So it's matching the flashing all the way around the building. We don't want to do that in this case though. So what we're going to do is, rather than choosing one of these other flashing options, which will just do exactly what they sound like it will do, we're going to choose this option, miter the cladding. This is a setting that we added I think about 2 years ago now. So it's been in there for a little while now, but some of you may not know that it's there. So we're going to choose this option and hit OK, and it will do exactly that. So instead of having a big piece of flashing running all the way down there, it's just going to nicely miter those pieces of rib cladding as they get to the intersection point, and that'll just carry all the way across there. So it makes a really nice and smooth transition between them there. So if that's the sort of effect that you want, which obviously ribbed is probably the main case that you would want to do something like this, but there's plenty of other times you might want to use it as well, which we'll look at in a little bit also. This does a very nice job of doing that. So it doesn't matter what angle your roof is or anything like that. I cranked this one across just so that it was a bit more exaggerated so you could see what was happening there, but it'll work with any intersecting angles, and just do a nice miter between the two pieces of cladding. So on that topic, the next thing I want to do is come over to this roof here. This one's a bit more complex. I'm going to select the roofs, and we are going to put a covering on again. Just reset to default again and hit OK. So this will come in again with our corrugate default settings. You can see it puts on the flashing in places that you would expect it to. And we've got a valley here as well. You can see it's doing pretty much what you'd expect. Everything's mitered up and that sort of thing. What we're going to do with this one is we are going to modify one of the edges. And in particular, what we're going to do is we're going to split an edge. This might be a thing that you will want to do from time to time. If, say, what we're going to do here is we're going to make the gutter only go about halfway across this edge and then have it stop there, and we'll put a downpipe in there as well. So we're going to essentially chop the edge of this in half and have the gutter stop midway down. So we're going to do this in floor plan to start with. So first of all, the thing that we need to do is we need to define a point for this change to happen. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select the roof itself rather than the covering. So select the roof here. And what we're going to do is we're going to add an extra node to this edge. So we're not changing the actual roof geometry at all. We're just drawing an extra node. So it's this option here from the pet palette. And we're just going to put it in line with the rest of the edge. So we'll stop at around here. Okay, so the roof itself has not been changed at all apart from the addition of that additional node. So if I go back to 3D, you won't see any changes there at all because there is no change. We've just added an extra dot onto the edge. But the difference is that now we have this edge split in two so far as the roof is concerned, the roof covering is concerned rather. So now we can go into the coverings menu and choose edit roof covering edges, and on this long edge you'll see it's actually chopped into two shorter edges now, and so now what we can do is choose the edge that we don't want gutter on and say this one should just be a barge, and if we hit OK it will do exactly that. So it stops the gutter at the point that we split it. The rest continues on with the barge, so the barge you can see is running uninterrupted down to the end there, but our gutter has stopped where we wanted it to. It's put a cap on and it no longer intersects and miters down at the end over here either. And we can do the same on this gutter as well. So if we want that to stop at a certain point, which we probably do, we can do the same there. So we can just put in an additional node and have the gutter stop wherever it is we want it to. And it still behaves like a normal edge. So if I come in back in here, I can still grab hold of my hotspot here and put a downpipe in, say there. And then we could do the same on the other edge as well. So we get the downpipe there as well. So that will give us what we wanted to do there. So that's a good way to just add in changes as you might need them. There's various other things you might want to do. Maybe this meeting up with something else, and so you want it to be this edge to be an apron instead. Maybe you don't want to barge at all. Maybe you want to have that edge set to none. You can choose any of those options that are available here. So we could just select this one, and we could say that actually it's a none, so this will just do nothing at all. And so you can see we've got our cladding applied still, but then nothing else is happening here, so it just stops immediately. That's again something that you might want to do depending on what it's intersecting with, or if there's something unusual going on there. Maybe you've got a different object placed there or something like that. So it's a good way to chop up your edges and allow you to do different things on them without actually changing the overall structure of what you're dealing with there. And while we're here looking at this roof, the other thing I want to look at is that mitering that we saw before. So it's not just useful on steep changes like this. Obviously we could apply it to this, and all of our corrugate would meet up and miter across nicely, which would look a little unusual, but we can see how that looks. So if I go back into flashing, and choose the ridge there, miter the cladding, it'll do that, which looks pretty much how you would expect it to. So you can see that we just have the corrugate mitering as best it can in the joints there. Probably not something you'll be wanting to do with corrugate, but for things like if you have let's say just a flat piece of cladding, so maybe you're modeling just a flat piece along there, this using this option rather than having a flashing or something on that will just mean that it very nicely meets up, so you don't get a sort of a gap because it's got two edges that are perpendicular or anything like that. So using the miter option, depending on what your actual cladding is, can still be a very useful option, even if you're not wanting to do something like what we had over there. So that can be very useful. All right, the last thing I want to look at with the roof covering is something we're going to apply on this roof here. This is just a simple single plane roof. We're going to start off again by applying a covering. We'll reset to default for this one again. And it does what you would expect it to do. So you can see we've got our flashings and we've got our gutter down at the bottom here. And what we're going to do with this one is that we're going to just mess around with the end of the gutter. Specifically, we're going to say that this one, maybe it's intersecting with another roof that would be next to it or something like that. And so we want, for instance, the gutter to continue on even where the roof isn't there, or where the covering isn't at least. So what we can do for that is we will jump into the settings of the roof edges, and we'll say that this edge closest to us actually is a none, so no edge. So our cladding is just going to stop at that point. So you can see the roof edge there, and then our gutter and everything like that just stops at this point. And then what we're going to do is this one here. We'll zoom into here so you can see we've got a purple hotspot here. There's actually two purple hotspots. This one here will do the gutter extension though, which is what we're looking at for this one. This one here is the downpipe. So we can put that on there just so that it's out of the way. But this one will allow us to extend the gutter out, so we can come out like this. And if we go back to 3D, you'll see that the gutter will just carry on to wherever we want it to be. So there's a good option if you have something sort of unusual going on in there and you want the gutter to pass along maybe an edge that doesn't have a cladding on it at all or something like that. You might have another roof over at this part here that it's joining onto or something like that, but that will allow us to extend that one out. The other thing that we can do while we're here is we'll just edit the edges again, and we'll change this one to be a junction. So we'll say that this is joining on to some other roof. So it doesn't change much, except that we see our bit of flashing there, but you can see that our gutter is still got the extension turned on, but it is stopping flat here. And in this case, maybe we want to turn this a bit so that it meets up with something else that's coming the other way. Maybe we have another gutter that's being extended from the opposite direction. We want it to meet up. There are various possibilities for what you might want to do here, but we can do that. So if we go back into our floor plan view, you can see our gutter is still going on here. We can still extend it using this hotspot here. What we want to do is we want to modify the angle though. So what we're going to do is jump into the settings, go to configuration, and you'll see that we've got these settings for the adjacent roof edges. And we're going to say that the direction, rather than calculating the direction of the adjacent roof, because we don't actually have an adjacent roof in this case. So this would be useful if you don't have an adjacent roof, or if you do, but the matching isn't finding it correctly, or it's finding it correctly, but you want to override that with some setting of your own. We can choose custom here instead. Hit OK, and that won't change the display at all, but you'll get one extra hotspot here, and if I pick that up, you'll see that it is the, if I stop moving, you'll see the adjacent roof edge direction. So this lets us define the direction that the roof edge that it's touching is going to be, the angle that that's going to be coming in at. So if I move over to here, you can see that it has now adjusted it to pretend that this is the edge that is coming in. And if I go to 3D, you'll see that the edge of our gutter has now mited around to meet our imaginary extra roof that we're joining to there. So this will allow you to cover off scenarios where you might need to do something like that as well. Again, it's not something that you'll need to do most of the time, but there are certain situations where you might want to. And so the purpose of me showing you this is to let you know that that's available and that this is how you do it. If you have done a bunch of this and you wanted to set it back to the default, so you want to get rid of all of that stuff, you can hit reset and it will just forget the changes you've made, so it goes back to straight. And you can also just set it back to calculated, and that will make it pick up whatever the actual adjacent edge is, which in our case there isn't one, just because it would make it difficult to visualize what we're looking at here, but that will make it do that as well. So that's some good options for customizing what is going on with some of the parts of your roofs to fit in various situations that you might find yourself in. The next thing I want to look at is the wall tool, and one particular problem that you might strike with this. So I'm just going to jump to the floor plan view, because we have to be in floor plan to attach wall coverings. Roof coverings, you may know this already, you can attach those in 3D, but wall coverings have to be attached in floor plan view so that you can define what side of the wall they go onto. So that's why we've dropped out to floor plan here. I'm going to choose the coverings menu again, and we'll apply a wall covering. I'll reset to defaults here, hit OK, and then I'll place on the outside of my wall. Okay, and that goes ahead and does that. Jump out to 3D, and here's our problem. So you can see it's applied the default settings, which are weatherboards with a, I think it's a kind of a plywood texture to it. But you can see our issue here is that we have this window coming in quite close to the edge of the wall, and the covering does not put any weatherboards on it at all. So we get this big gap here, and we can quite easily fix this. So what's going on here, just before I fix it, what's going on is that the wall covering has tolerances built in to ignore the geometry at the ends of walls in particular. In most cases, this isn't a problem because there's nothing going on there, and it gets around issues that you might have with intersections with walls. If you have particularly complicated intersections, like anything more than just two walls meeting, it can help with that. However, as a consequence of that, it also has made it so that it has ignored the fact that there should be a bit of covering there. So what we're going to do is we're going to jump into the settings. So you can see we've got our weatherboards selected and they've got the plywood thing on there. We don't care about that for now though. What we're going to do is we're going to jump up to the configuration page, and you'll see on the bottom left we have this area here. Ignore wall geometry near ends, and it's set to ignore the geometry 200 mils from both ends of the wall. So as I was saying before, that's what is going on there. It is choosing to ignore anything that happens at the ends. It's just pretending it's not there, so that when anything unusual is happening with intersections there, it can still draw the covering without any trouble. What we're going to do though is we're going to tell it not to ignore that. We're going to tell it to keep paying attention to what's going on. Our wall is about 90 mil thick, and the window is not hitting the second wall, so I'm going to say that we can stop ignoring past about the 50 mil mark. So I'll put in 50 mils here. I'm not actually sure if it considers this to be the right or left end, so I'm just going to put in 50 mil for both. You could do one and then see what it does and then do the other, but I'll just do it for both in this case and hit OK, and now you'll see that we get our wall covering continuing all the way down there as it would normally. It's not going to mess with our intersection because it's just a normal two wall intersection here. And in most cases, it won't cause any trouble for you. It's just quite unusual cases where it needs to be able to handle that. So if you ever have something like this where there is a opening of some sort or something modifying the wall, you also have the same happen with beams. So if I go back into here and we get a beam, horrible beam, I'm sorry about that, but okay, beam actually works, never mind. But if you have some situation going on, it will almost always be with an opening, a window or a door in particular. You may get this happen near your corners. The workaround for that, just go in here, configuration setting, and set this to something lower than the actual amount of space that you're using up there. So 200 by default, obviously we are inside that 200 with what we have there, so going with 50 here is a good one for us here, but you can go all the way down to 0 without any trouble. There we go. So that will do that for us. So that is the wall cladding. The other thing that I wanted to look at with the wall cladding tool was just something that I saw that was pretty cool. That's something that you can do with the wall cladding that you might not be aware of, and that is to use the wall cladding to do different things than what it sounds like they would be for, essentially. So what I mean by that is, for instance, at the moment we're using weatherboards, and there's a bunch of different cladding options available, obviously. So we've got boards and battens, we've got bricks and blocks, we've got ribbed metal, etc., etc. These don't just do the thing that they sound like they do, though. So, or rather they do, but you can use them in different ways. So, for instance, the one that I saw earlier this week was using panels. So we use the panel option, come through here and just set this to be, oh, that's a building material, not a surface, sorry. We'll change that to tile. So spoiler alert, we're going to be making this into some tiles, and we'll make it glossy white, override that. And then we'll make the grout light grey, sure, or rather the gap between the panels. So what we're going to do is we're going to make these into tiles. So we've got an air gap of 20. Let's turn off the air gap. These 30 mil thick, that's okay, but our C and our D are our sizes for our panels. So let's make them 300 by 300 tiles instead. So we're not doing anything that the tool can't necessarily do. It's just that it's not exactly what you would expect, maybe. So let's make a 15 mil grout there. The rest of that looks pretty good. So we'll hit OK, and it will just go ahead and do that for us. So, oh, whoops, that was only in one direction. I forgot the other size gap. 15 mil, and the other gap is G. There we go. So now we've got our nice modelled 3D tiles stuck at our wall. So this could be useful, again, obviously, for modelling interiors. The wall covering tool is not entirely only useful for modelling exteriors. You could do tiling with this. You could also do tiling using the brick and block covering type, which gives you additional options that might be useful as well. So we've got bricks and blocks, and you can choose the offset between them and that sort of thing. So again, you could use that to make up some cool looking tiles if you just set it to have some particularly thin blocks running all the way over it. That would do a similar effect as well. And another thing that you can do, which is kind of cool, is using boards and battens. You can attach battens, but essentially not have the boards part. So you can basically have battens drawn directly onto your wall, which again is something that might be useful in certain cases. You might have a wall composite that already includes the sort of the panel part of the board part, and so you don't want to model that here. We just want to attach battens to it. We can do that. So all you need to do for that is set the board thickness to 0, and that will give us a bunch of battens. E is the thickness. Let's just make that 50 again. And let's make them run vertical. Hit OK. And that will just attach a bunch of battens. So we have no actual board part. It's just a bunch of battens attached to our wall. So again, various situations where you might want to do something like this. This is not a specific example. I just want to give you the idea, essentially, that you can use this to do stuff aside from specifically what it sounds like it is for. When we get down to weatherboards and that sort of thing, probably less applicable there, but the boards and battens, bricks and blocks, and panels in particular, you can use for a lot of unusual things like that. So you could do your tiles, you can attach boards directly, you can do all sorts of things like that. And also, don't forget, you can use them for internal walls as well. So you could have regular weatherboards on the outside of this wall, and then on the inside, say it's a bathroom or something, you could have tiles running over the walls as well. And because the coverings will allow you to do the break above and below certain heights, you can use that to your advantage as well, so that you could say, actually, there should be a change at a sill height. So we could have tiles on the main part. So we go into panels here, have tiles running on the main part of the cladding. And then on the below sill height, we could have generic, is there a carpet building? Yes, there is. We have carpet running halfway up the walls, and then tiles on the rest of the walls, or whatever you need it to do. So there's plenty of options to do there. We can have a join between and that sort of thing as well. So just to give you an idea of the sorts of things that you might be able to do with coverings that you might not already be doing, there's plenty of options available there. I hope that's been informative. I'm just going to quickly check to see if there's any questions, and then we will finish up. Okay. All right, looks like no questions today. So thanks for your time, everyone. Again, as I mentioned at the beginning, if you have any suggestions for what you would like to see shown in one of these webinars, please let me know, log a support ticket and just say, hey, I've been attending these webinars for 17 years now, and Josh still refuses to acknowledge how to do this thing. Please show me how to do it, or whatever it is that you want to know. I'm looking for ideas for what sorts of things we can cover in these. As you may know, for most of this year, we've been doing sort of an introduction to each of the tools. We've gone through all of them now. So now I'm looking for sort of more unusual things, or some specific cases that you might want to look at. So if you have any suggestions, please send those through. That would be great. But thanks again for your time, and I will catch you at the next one.